Welcome back, friends, and today I'm reading an original novel, Piggy, Traitor by Terrance Crawford, Scholastic, Book 5, first part of Chapter 1, because there are long chapters just like the rest. And go watch my videos on the first 4 books, but there's also the Piggy Intercity coming out. It's not fully come out, because when you want to go meet some person, it says coming soon, you're not allowed to go meet them. A lot of the places don't even have interiors. You can't get to certain areas. And yeah. There's also the first game, which were both these games were made by Minitoons, which also have a YouTube channel. So if you like Pig, go subscribe to them too. And go watch my first part of the game that came out yesterday. I might release more on the game, because there is a lot to do with the exploring, but after you explore everything, there's not much to do but get ready for the next update. And then there are how many chapters? There are 5 chapters. They're both all long chapters. Also, those are the entities of the book right before this. Then the Cure, I'm pretty sure, is the first book. I've read them all, and this is a picture for it. But in the entity, it ended. So I don't understand. Chapter 1, Part 1. For those who were counting, it had been 4 months since the monster had taken over the island of Evalia. Okay, also, Evalia is where you are in Piggy Intercity. Give or take a couple of weeks, there were rumors of how the virus had started. Of course, the failed cure for a rare disease, an ancient curse let loose from the North Sea, the first sign of the beginning of the end of the world, but ultimately it didn't matter much. Wherever it had come from, there was an infection that was turning the citizens of the island into vicious feral creatures. All over the island, monsters had appeared, beasts who could turn you into one of them, with as little as a bite. The creatures were massive in size, with strength to match with glowing red eyes and hygiene that was so staggeringly poor that you could smell them on the wind. Those who were smart, and those fortunate few with the means, had long since evacuated the island or taken shelter at the safe place in the center of the city. The less fortunate had been left behind to fend for themselves amongst the infected creatures and a slew of problems that they created. Diego Alvarez had always been one of the less fortunate. Thud. The heavy end of the shovel collided with the sign of the creature's head. A heavy metallic clang ringing loud in the night as the beast staggered back. Dazed, Diego adjusted his grip on the handle of the shovel. Leaning forward on his tiptoes to cautiously examine his handiwork, he could see his reflection in the creature's gleaming red eyes. As it crossed and rolled back into its massive head, the thing was almost certainly stunned. This daze-like state had never seemed to last long, but luckily for Diego, he would not need much time. He slipped past the repugnant creature, and it swayed in place. His destination was the building behind it. Bright fluorescent floodlights illuminated the entryway of the grocery store, courtesy of the billboard that loomed overhead. Whatever the billboard had originally been advertising was lost to time beneath a series of graffiti. Silver spray painted paws and barely legible text adored the ad. A flickering function neon sign buzzed listlessly on the door. Closed. Not wrong, Diego thought to himself. Doors to the store were bolted shut and wrapped tight with chains, as if to emphasize the point. Well, it wasn't as though Diego was abiding to the store's normal hours of operation anyway. He took a deep breath, steadying himself and glancing over his shoulder as he shoved the handle over his shovel. Though the massive chains enveloped the door's handle, gripping either end of his shovel, Diego began to twist the tool in his hand, the chains growing tighter and tighter until they began to strain. Eventually, some would give, and Diego's shovel had not failed him yet. After a few minutes, Diego's work heard the telltale groaning of the doors hinges as they gave way to the pressure and cracking at the frame. Diego quickly relented, relieving his trusty shovel of the stress. He gave the wooden handle a kiss of gratitude. Once again, the tool had seen him through, but its work was not quite done. Shoving the angled edge of the shovel into the door frame, he wedged the door of the grocery store open, stepping inside and quickly shoving the thin end of his shovel through the door's handles effectively, barricading the door behind him. As the last thing he needed was for his infected acquaintance to come to its senses and sneak up on him when his back was turned. Though, admittedly, that was the easiest way to sneak up on someone. The rumbling of Diego's stomach quickly brought him back down to reality. He had been on the move for so long he couldn't remember the last time he had enjoyed a proper meal. Though the words enjoy and proper were doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Diego rubbing his hands together with a greedy glee, like a fly landing near a pile of sugar as the scanning of the supermarket's eyes hungrily falling over the store's inventory. Diego skipped nearly up on down the aisles, filling the grocery cart with anything and everything that he could get his hands on. The cart's wheels spun in different directions as Diego swept through the supermarket, but Diego couldn't be bothered to care. Usually, on expeditions like this, the shops had long since been raided by other people, or worse, they had been left to the elements. There was nothing more defeating than fighting off a small army of infected creatures, only to be rewarded with shelves full of rotted meat and wilted vegetables. Diego tore into a pack of potato chips with his teeth, and the sudden sharp taste making him wince as he stuffed the entire content of the bag into his mouth and swallowed dryly. He wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve, salt and grease smearing across the already dirty garment. He took a rare moment to relax and leaning against the store shelves, letting himself slide down to the floor. He hadn't realized just how badly his legs had been aching until he gave them the reprieve. It had been a while since he had last let himself rest, and if things kept going the way they were, it wouldn't be another long while before he would have the opportunity to relax again. Like most of the other citizens of Velia, Diego certainly had a rough couple of weeks. Maybe this was a sign that things were beginning to turn around in Diego's admittedly limited experience. When things seemed too good to be true, they often were. Diego licked his lips with a dry tongue, suddenly very aware of the sound of a cooler in the next aisle over. The dull hum of the electricity and the gentle clattering of glass balls within Diego screeched, his legs twisting his torso back and forth till they were up before grabbing onto the shelves and pulling himself back to his feet. He was rounding the corner to the drink aisle when everything went dark. Diego had heard it said that when one of your senses was taken from you, the other kicked into overdrive to compensate. As lights in the grocery store went out, Diego was plunged in darkness. His head tilted to the side as his ears perked up, suddenly alert to the most minute of sounds. Some of the freezers in the frozen food aisle died down, leading Diego to believe that this was a loss of power to the entire store, not a simple lighting issue. Diego sighed through his nostrils, and the sudden surge of adrenaline coursed through his veins seemed to have cleared his sinuses as well. Luckily, he could see the supermarket's main entrance, moonlight streaming in through the automatic glass doors. Diego reluctantly abandoned his grocery cart on the side of the aisle, fumbling along in the dark toward the entrance. He could hardly see his hands in front of his face, let alone where he was going. Each step that he took was a gingerly experiment of placing one foot in front of the other and hoping not to run face first into anything. The more Diego inched his way toward the entrance, the more moonlight seemed to stream through the doors. Illuminating his way, Diego reached the entrance in the dark, managing to carefully extricate his shovel from the door handles. He was all set to make a quick exit, empty-handed but with a full stomach. When he saw the looming shadows against the moonlit walls of the supermarket, Diego's breath hitched in his chest as he flattened himself against the walls, fingers curling into a familiar grip around the well-worn wooden handle of the shovel. "How much time do we have?" Diego heard a voice pipe up from the base of one of his massive shadows. The sound of the voice believed the size of the shadow, The strange query barely registered above a squeak about 10 minutes. Just like always, the other figure on Shouting Shadows replied this. Voice deeper and more assertive than the other grocery stores like these usually. We'll have backup generators when the freezer's on this case of a storm. You know, they'll kick on in a few minutes, but we'll be long gone by then. Both voices were getting closer to Diego as they descended upon the grocery store. His palms were beginning to ache as the tensions with which he was gripped the shovel. The station which he was gripping the shovel, he readjusted his grip, trying to best not to notice how much his palms were sweating. He knew that these two interlopers were not infected. The monstrous creatures that now roamed Avelia did not have the same language capabilities after succumbing to the infection, preferring to communicate instead through a series of nearly incomprehensible shrieks and grunts. Unfortunately for Diego, the creatures were not the only dangers in the wild of Avelia. Weeks and months trapped inside their homes had only made the people of Avelia erratic and more than a little stir-crazy. The kind of people who went roving through the night were often not the kind of people you wanted to meet moving roving through the night. Diego swallowed dryly, adrenaline coursing through his body as the two voices neared. Diego had considered making a break for it, but was too late for that now. He had been paralyzed by fear like some gillies. Roxy had missed his window. He closed his eyes and tried to keep his breathing under control. As his heart pounded in his chest, but Diego knew that his option came down to the fight or flight, and the flight option seemed to have expired. Resigning to his fate as the voice approached, Diego whipped around the corner, swinging his shovel at the head of the larger of the two creatures. As usual, Diego's aim ranged true, and the metal head of his shovel connected solidly with one of the trespassers' heads. The shovel slammed, reverberating with a resounding thud, the sound eclipsed only by the volume of the scream that immediately followed it. Ouch! The victim of Diego's blow cried out, staggering in place for just a few seconds before raising a hand to nurse his temple. It was easier to see both him and his companion in the moonlight. He was a larger tiger-like creature, big and burly in his stance, stripes arched down the body, covered by a dirty waistcoat and wearing boots. Diego's strike had caused a large duck-billed and mesh-backed cap to spin sideways on the tiger's head. Since the feline was almost twice his size, Diego quickly came to the conclusion that he could not be blamed for acting rashly. Terry, the smaller of the two, cried out as he stepped out of the shadows into the moonlight. Diego brandished his shovel in front of himself defensively. He had used it once already, and he wasn't afraid to use it again if he had to. He would not have to. "I'm all right, Lucy," the tiger called Terry, grumbly. "You get right in teeth. Sneaky little guy. You caught me off guard, that's all." The one called Lucy didn't seem to be the muscle of the group. Even still, that marched forward, shoving Diego against the brick wall of the storefront. "And just what did you do that for?" Lucy exclaimed, jabbing an accusatory finger into Diego's chest. She was smaller than he was, a lemur with a pair of large, bright brown eyes and a ringed tail that poked out of her simple dress. I'm sorry, I didn't think." Diego stammered, tripping over his words. It had been longer than he cared to admit since he had a normal conversation. It said something about the world that he lived in these days, that this was what passed for a normal conversation. "No, you didn't think, did you?" Lucy continued. "You've thrown off our whole plan." Diego arched an eyebrow. He didn't know what they'd had planned, much less than he had somehow thrown it off track. "I did." "No, getting clobbered with a shovel was an important part of the process," Lucy stated sarcastically. "How are you doing over there, big guy?" Power in the grocery store chugged back to life, casting an illuminating glow on Diego and company as they overhead fluorescence kicked back to life. Lucy sighed in expression. Whatever plan they had banked on, Diego had ruined it all with his selfish and inconsiderate thoughts of self-preservation. Lucy threw her arms up in the air in defeat. "Well, that's just great. What are we supposed to do now, Lucy Wise?" Oh no, Terry replied. He seemed much less agitated than she did. Though to be fair, it was quite likely that his brain was still added from the blow to his head. But he can make but can you get me some ice cream? Lucy panted him comfortably on the top of his head while he winced from the gesture. Sure thing, bud. Lucy said. What flavor? Terry groaned. It doesn't matter. It's for my head. Lucy chuckled. Keep an eye out for those things. If we're not back in 15 minutes, we'll know. Terry nodded solemnly, pulling himself to his feet as at his full weight. Harry was even more massive. Diego was impressed that he had managed to get a hit in on him at all. It suddenly dawned on Diego that if Terry was meant to keep watch out there, then Diego was the second half of Lucy's we. Sure enough, when he looked back at Lucy, she was looking at him expectantly as if waiting for him. Diego swallowed dryly, closing the distance between them and making his way back toward the aisles of the grocery store. He figured that at least we owed them this, as it was an overzealous that had ruined their plan. He had just roamed the store by himself. It wasn't as if he could be any worse with the little backup, right? Diego was wrong. The shutting down and subsequent restart of the grocery store's power had not gone unnoticed, whereas less than an hour ago, Diego had been able to roam the aisles of the supermarket unbothered. Now he and Lucy were greeted by an unmistakable smell of the infected creatures the moment that they neared the first aisle. It did not take long to locate the behemoths. It wasn't as if they were made of effort to hide themselves. And even the flesh that, like their massive gleaming frisbee-sized eyes, glowed a menaced crimson color. And that's the end of chapter 1, part 1. So, friends, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on social media, Funkyplaybrothers, Funkyplaybrothers, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. Thanks for watching. Bye.